Hello, everyone. Welcome. In this episode of Existential Detective, we are going to talk about the ongoing transit of Uranus through the sign of Taurus. This transit has been affecting everyone on the globe, and it has had a very interesting manifestation. So we are going to talk about those manifestations. Uranus will stay in the sign of Taurus until the spring of 2026. So, um, quite some time left. And during the presentation, I invite you to use the method of association that we've used before when we talked about the zodiac houses, signs, and planets. I am going to refer to mythology in most of my videos because mythology contains a code language to decipher the essential meaning of what's happening. So mythology and also symbols. So whenever I use a symbol and I invite you to go within, to close your eyes and refer to the inner wisdom. It may sound banal, and this technique will improve your intuition. I don't think there's anything wrong with our intuitions. It's just because we don't use them, they kind of atrophy. So this will be one of the ways to develop your intuition further and see what you come up with when I give you those symbols to ponder. Without further ado, let us begin. Okay. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so Uranus transit into Taurus, and I titled it A New World Order, and we'll see what that means. Okay, so excusez-moi, just for a second. Let's begin. So we'll start with a signification of the planet. What does Uranus represent? Uranus and the sign of Aquarius. Uranus in astronomy is known as a sideway planet because it rotates on its side, like kind of on the hip, yeah? That's why it's different from all the other planets. And it also rotates from east to west direction. So we've already established a little quirk. The first thing that we've established based on astronomy, hard evidence, right? Science, is that is different from the others, different from the group. Second thing, Uranus was discovered in 1781 by William Herschel, and William Herschel used a telescope to discover Uranus. So amongst other things, Uranus rules new technology and all sorts of industrial revolutions we've had in the past and that we are undergoing right now. So this is not a coincidence as well. Uranus ruling technology and novelty was discovered by using a new piece of technology in those days, a telescope. Now let's get into mythology. So Father Uranus or Father Sky in the ancient Greek mythology interacted with Gaia, Earth, Mother Nature, and that's how life was created. However, Uranus was the sky god And he didn't like any of the children that Gaia gave birth to. Why? Because they were imperfect. They were not godly. They were ungodly. They were not, Uranus was a god, so the children were not perfect. They were repulsive. He was repulsed by them, and then he devoured them and he put them back into the earth's gut. So life couldn't start, evolution couldn't start because of this. And then Gaia, Mother Earth, decided to sort of trick him. So she asked and taught one of her kids, that was Saturn actually, to castrate Uranus, to try to kill him. And Saturn succeeded to castrate Uranus. So that's mythology, but what does that really mean? Yeah, what is the meaning of that? So imagine, so chaos in the beginning, yeah, the universal chaos, no structure. And then we have Earth, planet Earth. And then we have Saturn who castrated, who kind of limited that chaos, that universal disorder, yeah, by introducing order, because Saturn is order, hierarchy. And how did that all start? By introduction of time. That's how Kronos, or Father Time, introduced time. And that introduced structuring of the world as we know it. So time only exists here, in this reality, right? We know that time flows differently in different realities, galaxies, wherever. So Saturn is to blame for that. So we've covered the interaction between Gaia and Uranus, Father Sky, Uranus, and not only in Greek mythology is this myth used to describe creation of the world. It's also used in many other mythologies and folklores around the world. So the purpose of Uranus, it always interacts together in our lives, on our individual destinies and our charts together with Saturn. It constantly knocks on Saturn's door and it demands change because all of the elaborations, everything that I will be teaching and talking about is based on the fact that, based on the postulate that our soul is in this body to evolve, to make the unconscious conscious. So Uranus is there to interact with Saturn, which restricts and is kind of stable and solid and doesn't want to change. So Uranus is there to interact with it and introduce change. And then Saturn comes and solidifies change. So we have the interaction of both principles. Just to add to this myth, I have another myth for you that is going to describe Uranus's a principle even further. So that's the Prometheus myth. Do we know the myth of Prometheus, who stole the fire from gods and gave it to humans? So he introduced knowledge, new knowledge to humans. For that, he was severely punished in a cruel way. You can find out about that if you're interested, the way that Prometheus was punished. So Prometheus's actions and what he did are closely connected with the archetype of Aquarius, planet Aquarius, and Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, as we all know. So what he did, he kind of rebelled against gods, higher authorities. That's what Uranus does. That's what we do, prompted by Uranus. Wherever we have Uranus in our chart, this is where we challenge the status quo. So rebellion against authorities and the introduction of the new knowledge, because Aquarius rules new knowledge. And we've already established that knowledge nowadays closely connected with technology. this is where we are going towards. Right. So now we've discussed Earth, we've discussed Aquarius, we've discussed Taurus, and more about Earth and the planet Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus, and I'm going to use a quote by the greatest astrologer ever, Jeffrey Wolf Green, and this is what Jeffrey had to say about sign of Taurus. The essence of the Taurus archetype is one of the personal values, interpersonal relatedness with oneself, the instinct within the species to procreate in order for the species to survive, the instinct to survive in general in each person, the personal and material resources necessary to effect survival, self-reliance and self-sufficiency, and the need to stabilize whatever is unstable. So that's the sign of Taurus. So we've used the archetype of Poseidon stealing fire, and now we're using Taurus archetype. And I would like to explain, to elaborate, what does that mean and why are we using so many archetypes and what are archetypes? Archetypes are, it's a term developed by the great Carl Gustav Jung. Those patterns that we repeat, that humanity repeats, they're like kind of think of them as a sort of the codes, kind of like a code that keeps being repeated by that software throughout time. So in this case, Taurus, it represents our second house in the zodiac, and it represents the first, the way after we finish with Aries, we're born, the ascendant sign, then we come to the second house is Taurus. Taurus represents our body, and the way that infants learns about their environment, the baby learns about the environment is through interaction, through figuring out the limitations of their own body, hot, cold, taste, touch, all of these things. They belong into the realm of the second house. And this is where we have our needs met. So that's the signification of Taurus, the stability that we need to have there. We need to know that we are safe and we can survive. Yeah, and then building up on that starts our self-esteem and self-reliance, ability to rely and feel secure within ourselves, which is then reflected into all those Venusian outwardly manifestations such as money, income, salary, economy, monetary gains, all of those things. But the essence of the archetype is self-sufficiency, survival, having your needs met, and body. So, and you know, getting in touch with your body, feeling your body and bodily needs as well. So Earth represents the all the living beings on this planet, animal life, the plants, and people, of course, and it represents them in their interconnectedness state, because we are connected with all of the living things on the planet, with plants, with animals. So this is what the sign also represents. And it kind of rules, if I want to sum it up, it would, in a nutshell, in one word, it would be the cycle of life and in its perfection. And it also represents natural law at work. This is where natural law works perfectly well, even if it's not noted by us humans. Nature works perfectly. So all of the laws that we mentioned before when we talked about the zodiac and houses, the law principle of polarity, rhythm, ebb and flow, natural cycles, right? Gender, reproduction, nurturing. That's why the moon feels at its best in this sound, because the moon always changes, but in the sign of Taurus, it gets the stability it needs, and it gets that emotional, and it gets that satisfaction, like material stability and satisfaction. And that's Earth for you. It's the mother. It's the mother. So think about the archetype of mother and nurturing and feeling satisfied. Think about that. If you close your eyes and you think about all those things, what makes you feel safe, secure, spiritually and also within your body, that would give you a good indication. Okay, right. And now, so we've defined Aquarius. We've also gave some definitions to describe Taurus and the mother, the great mother. And now let's discuss what is the relationship between the sign of Taurus and Aquarius. It's a 90-degree angle, and 90 degree, right? Okay, so it's an aspect that invokes confrontation, and it's a necessary, evolutionary, necessary confrontation. So this evolutionary necessary confrontation, because in order for the change to take place, we need to confront. Yeah, we need to confront our immediate environment. So basically, these two polarities need to become conscious of themselves through another, which is really, it's a challenging thing to do. And this is what we have been undergoing ever since this transit started in the spring of 2018. And let's see, where are we now? What's going on now? What kind of troubles, quote unquote, what kind of changes has Uranus caused so far in our society? And we'll begin with Earth, right? And what has to do with Earth? What is the primary thing that has to do with Earth, with soil itself, is the agriculture. We're dependent on agriculture, right? And before I go into further elaboration of this slide, let us watch this video. Okay, so as you can see in this video, robotization of agricultural, of harvesting, and robotization of agriculture is presented. And Now, if we look at the photo and on the right-hand side, we can see Bill Gates and his wife, Melinda, and we can see the map of America as it is. What does this map represent? It represents all of the land that Bill Gates has purchased so far. And it says the article stated in Eric O'Keefe's The Land Report on the Land, says that, quotes, I quote, he's the new McDonald. Bill Gates owns hundreds of thousands of acres across the United States, including 242,000 acres of farmland, making him the country's top agricultural landholder, according to, end quotes, this is according to Eric O'Keefe's The Land Report. So look what has happened now. We have individuals, an extremely wealthy individuals that are buying land. In this case, an enormous amount of land has been bought by Bill Gates in this case. And he has invested billions into robotization of the agricultural processes. And also, we've also known that Bill Gates is was the one of the, actually bought the Monsanto. So a lot of the produce has been genetically modified as well. So he owns it now. And let's talk about that. Uranus, definitely, by the method of technology, we can see the influence of Uranus by introduction of this new technology in agricultural and land, and there is nothing wrong with that in its essence at all. We need technology, and I am by no means technophobic. I think technology is great, but we need to make sure to what extent, and we need to make sure that it remains our servant, not our master. So in this case, we can see that the scales are vary between a regular society and between an individual, such as Bill Gates, who has been buying all this land and doing whatever he wants to do on it. So the balance is highly disrupted. So there is a case of monopolizing. So when you monopolize land, you automatically monopolize, yes, you're right, food. So let's watch another video. So we have the 3D printing, steak printing machines. And what is being used as a justification is the ongoing climate crisis as a sort of a justification for all of these changes. I'll call them changes, technological advancements. we are being given a apocalyptic vision if we do not meet the objective of zero carbon emission by 2030, that we are going to be in deep trouble, and this could be the case. However, changing the food habits, the people's food habits, and you can see on the right hand side now they're exploring insects as a food source for humans, and they call them alternative protein, because if they use the names of the animals that they're using when they're making this alternative food, you'd probably never taste it. So a lot of these things are happening right now. It's not a science fiction movie, and it's not a tale or an apocalyptic vision. It's actually happening. How successful it will be, we have to wait and see. So in another case, we have the new technology being implemented in humanity, and and then using the justification of saving Earth, saving the mother, saving the environment. And we'll have that repeated on multiple occasions here. We'll have that trend repeated as well. Okay, so now we said that the first manifestation of the second house, the house and Taurus, is the body. Yeah. So how has this affected our health, human health, and transhumanism? So I'm going to explain transhumanism. Transhumanism is the belief that humans could be improved into so-called superhumans by kind of connecting them to machines, right, or AI. And let's watch the video of a Dr. Tal Zaks. He is the Chief Medical Officer at Moderna, and he talks about a mRNA technology. Let's try and figure out what that is about.
So I started my professional life about 30 years ago as a nurse in the pediatric intensive care unit. And I remember this one infant, let's call him Jonathan, who came in really, really ill. Seemed to have a rare genetic defect, but in those days, gene diagnosis was still in its infancy, so we couldn't really figure out what's wrong with him. And in the years since, as I've trained as a physician scientist, we've been living this phenomenal digital and scientific revolution. And I'm here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life, and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease. So here's all the biology you need to know in 30 seconds. Our body is made out of organs. Our organs are made out of cells. And in every cell, there's this thing called messenger RNA, or mRNA for short, that transmits the critical information from the DNA, our genes, to the protein, which is really the stuff we're all made out of. This is the critical information that determines what a cell will actually do. And so we think of it like an operating system.
So they think of it like an operating system. They think of our body like an operating system. Ponder that for a second. And I'll read the Ted Zaks statement one more time. So, over the last 30 years, I quote, we saw living this phenomenal digital scientific revolution, and I am here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life. And we've seen a mini demonstration on the way that they're hacking, that he explains it to us. They're hacking the software of life by instructing the mRNA, messenger RNA, to get, that is in charge of getting the codes from our DNA, and then he takes the code to protein and then makes that adequate protein that is needed for the body. So Mother Nature and our body, our processes are perfect, right? They're in perfect equilibrium. So our body knows what protein to make and what protein to stop making. And it's all interconnected. Everything, it's the whole system. So our body is like it's more perfect than any technology ever. It's like a spaceship. I mean, it's amazing. And this sounds, and I know he talks about the prevention and treatment of diseases. However, I'm just conscious of the fact that if we use this myopic view that allopathic medicine has been using so far in treating just a segmented part of where we of the disease or of the ailment, of treating that segmented, not in correlation with the entire body, with the entire equilibrium of the body, that we always have severe side symptoms. And by improving or healing one part, one function of the body, we actually damage another, right? We all know that. I'm sure at one stage of our life, we've all have taken pills to treat something, a headache or, I don't know, insomnia. And then it has been taken care of efficiently, but we have had side effects that we may or may not be aware of. So this is another concern when it comes to transhumanism. Uranus here in Taurus is the one causing those changes, and we'll find out where it all goes. Okay. And now when it comes to our body and youth, there is a tremendous effort to try to discover sort of a immortality pill, or to try to discover an immortality or fountain of youth, to try and look as young as we can. And there's nothing wrong about it. It's only human. But now we have a extraordinary phenomenon that the people who are funding those kind of researches, such as the one on the left-hand side, for example, Newsweek reports that blood from young people can slow aging in old or elderly people. So they have been founded by Silicon Valley, by the billionaires from Silicon Valley, right? Which is seriously disturbing and thought-provoking. Think about that. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a pig-human hybrid. So they have developed a pig-human hybrid, which they're going to use for organ harvesting. Think about that. And some of us may think, oh, well, I mean, that's great. If someone needs a liver, it would be easy to grow a liver in a lab, and this person could carry on with their life. You know, it could save lives. And yes, that is a great advantage. But again, we haven't had time to research the disadvantages. And now, when I talk about I've talked about the human body, transhumanism, and the influences, the manifestations of Uranus and Taurus. I'm not going to say that Uranus is causing it. No, Uranus brings new technology and that urge towards change, but we are the ones to decide on the manners and the ways how these changes and where and how will be implemented, right? So let's not blame the planet. So the growing tendency that I have noticed and propaganda is to sort of outsource our bodily autonomy to an algorithm. What that means, I'm going to give you some basic examples. For example, whatever we search online or Google online gets fed into a computer. So the reason that you sometimes get to fill in those little questions about whether you're human or not. Why do you think that happens? Why is that? Have you ever wondered? It's because we're actually feeding the algorithm about what is it like to be human. What are our choices? And we're teaching it. We're teaching the computer about us, about ourselves, and constantly. It's an interrupted process. Imagine how many people in the world have a laptop, desktop, or a cell phone. Almost all the people. So we're all like teaching the AI. And based on that, AI is kind of learning, right? It's constantly improving itself and it learns from people. One banal example is, remember, we have those, not we don't have, but there are those watches or bracelets that count your steps that you take during the day. And some people use them to count the steps, and then they calculate them into calories, and then they think that this is the amount of calories that they have spent on that day, and then that makes them feel good, or that makes them feel more confident about their self-image or body, or that even makes them feel that they're healthy, because this is what has been presented to us by propaganda, on television, magazines, etc., reality TV shows. So we no longer check within ourselves whether a certain food is good for us, how, and that should be the way to do it. So if you ingest something, you see how your body reacts, and then you decide that this is good or this is bad for you. So we've been kind of isolated from that natural way on how to check within ourselves, within our body. And now this information is fed into that mini little AI that is going to tell us whether we've been a good boy or a bad girl and didn't walk enough or run enough, which is extremely dangerous because it can affect if you give it that much power, it can affect your mood. Let's say one day it could say that, oh, you haven't walked enough, and then you would feel miserable because you haven't, but you don't even know. I mean, you don't even know, and that algorithm doesn't know you. It is not you. So this is the growing tendency to alienate people from checking within their bodies what is good for them or bad for them, and following the propaganda and following the news and what is being served to them. So we've covered those important areas. Now I'm going to talk about fashion a little bit, because it goes under the rulership of Venus, and Venus rules Taurus. So on the left-hand side, I've just I've taken one of the fashion shows, and it said that these were the latest human accessories during the Paris Fashion Week 2021. I'm not sure of the name of the designer. I didn't bother remembering his or hers. I'm not sure of the pronouns. His or her name. And you can see people wearing people. So human accessories. Think about that. Yeah, some changes in fashion. I'm not gonna share my opinions about this. I just would like to invoke some thoughts and thinking in you, and please share what you think about this, and think how does the fashion reflect the position of a human being and what it means to be human in these videos and generally speaking. So I'll play this one first. Okay. Oh, excuse me. And let's listen to this one very briefly. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. I'm clearly technophobic. So I have another video to share with you here. So what would you say the Uranus's influence in the sign of Taurus has been on the way that human being is presented in these fashion videos and fashion shows? What would you say about that? Please leave your comments below. What do you think about it? And what does it mean to be human? Okay, so that's just food for thought. Now, let us continue. And Venus rules, we said, economy and money. And there is a talk about monetary collapse and also huge jobs restructuring. So let's see what has been happening to jobs. And I believe we all know about this. That, oh, please excuse me. So by 2025, machines and humans will spend an equal amount of time on work. Again, we have the case of robotization and our jobs being outsourced to robots. It's inevitable. A lot of people have fully migrated to working from home, and there are a lot of advantages from doing that, as well as disadvantages, but it is something that I don't think will change back after this crisis. I just wanted to play this video for you. Okay, I don't think we're gonna do that here. But anyways, this video is about technology taking over our jobs. Another thing that there are rumors about is the introduction of digital currency and the universal basic income that the governments around the world globally are going to be giving citizens. So basically, this has been done in China largely, and that was interconnected to something called social credit. So the way that it works in China, we don't know if it's going to work that way, but it's definitely a mechanism of control, is that basically the governments are going to be giving you a certain amount of money monthly, whether you are employed or not employed, whether you're working or not. And then, of course, the currency will be digital, so that amount will be going to your bank account. And then based on that, something called social credit, if you violated some of the socially imposed norms by the government, let's say if you didn't pay your taxes, or you forgot to pay your bills, or you have a speeding ticket, or I don't know, you crossed the road at the at the wrong location, then it will be deducted from your UBI, and you're going to start receiving those kind of points or deductions or black points or lines or whatever they call them, but like penalties. And then that is going to affect your the amount of freedom that you have in the society. For example, if you have too many black points or negative points, penalties, you won't be able to book a flight or ticket or book a train, etc., etc. So this is where all this leads to. It leads to introduction of digitalization of our identities, of our IDs. So everything will be digital, and then all of the information will be fed into one global system. And based on that, AI will have the control over what's happening, which sounds extremely scary, but it's something to think about. So, right now, in conclusion, what is in common with all the current changes we're undergoing? What's in common, this is my observation, is that we're outsourcing all human activities into an algorithm, and we're using global warming and zero carbon emission objective in order to accomplish that. So that's going to be an excuse for all of these changes, or maybe other excuses, like the ongoing one that has to do with a certain infection. And the outcome of that is dependency on artificial intelligence in all spheres of life, as I said, as AI is growing. And we'll stop relying on our divine inner compass within, and we will stop our connecting with God. So because we are not in touch with ourselves, with our inner compass, it ceases to exist. It ceases to, we don't use it, so it kind of atrophies, it ceases to exist. And I think this is the point where we lose our humanity. So, yes. And to sum up, when it comes to all of those things that we've discussed in this presentation, it is essential and now thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your interest. I hope that this inspires you towards further research and towards further thought. I also want to invite you to counteract, and what that means is whenever you can to do the things that make us all human, in terms of, for example, to spend as much time as possible in nature, because nature resets us, and to be in touch with our bodies, and to use our inner compass to make judgments and decisions in the world, to feel our feelings as well, and maintain natural rhythms, because nature is the way out. We've come out of nature, and it is the only thing that can help us, that can restore us and rejuvenate us. So consult ourselves from within. We should do that in order to counteract this. And definitely our aim is not to abolish technology, but to establish and maintain a balance always protecting those imperfect. Remember, Uranus used to destroy his imperfect children. So we need to protect the imperfect humankind in its strivings, future strivings, and stay human, ultimately. Thanks again. Please leave comments in the comment sections below. And it's an honor once more having you as my viewer. Thank you. Bye.